Hi everyone, how's it going? Welcome to This Week in Research, a weekly show where we look at 5 studies that have been released over the past 7 days. The first one that we have for today is a big study on the planet's population. The researchers found that the global population would peak in 2064 at 9.7 billion before dropping down to 8.8 billion by the end of the century. The study was published in the prestigious The Lancet journal and funded by the Melinda and Gates Foundation. A report released by the UN just last year had estimated that the planet's population would reach 10.9 billion by the end of the century. That's 2 billion more compared to the estimates of this new research. The researchers associate this disparity between their findings and that of the UN to differences in their modeling as it relates to women's access to education and contraception. In fact, in an alternative model, they found that if the SDG goals, the UN SDG goals for women contraception and education were met, the population would be 6.3 billion by the end of the century. According to the study's modeling, the 5 largest countries by the end of the century will be India at 1.1 billion, Nigeria at 790 million, China at 730 million, the USA at 336 million, and Pakistan at 248 million. The study's findings also suggest a shifting age structure in many parts of the world. 2.37 billion individuals will be older than 65 compared to just 1.7 billion who will be below the age of 20 by the end of the century. The number of children younger than 5 is also forecasted to decline from 681 million to 401 million by the end of the century. That's a drop of 41%. At the same time, the number of individuals older than 80 is forecasted to increase from 141 billion in 2017 to 866 million by the end of the century. The researchers estimate that by the end of the century, 183 countries and 195 countries around the world will have a total fertility rate below 2.1 births per woman. This is the birth rate that researchers estimate necessary to maintain an existing population level without emigration. The researchers also found that 23 countries, which includes Thailand, Japan, and Spain, were forecasted to have a population decline greater than 50% by the end of the century. China's population is forecasted to decline by 48%. There are a lot of interesting stuff in this study. I really encourage you to check it out if you like it. For every single country, they have which year they will hit the peak population and what the population should look like by the end of the century. The researchers wrote in conclusion that their findings suggest that continued trends in female educational attainment and access to contraception will hasten declines in fertility and slow population growth. They further add that a sustained total fertility rate lower than the replacement level in many countries, including China and India, would have economic, social, environmental, and geopolitical consequences. They add that policy options to adapt to continued low fertility while sustaining and enhancing female reproductive health will be crucial in the years to come. So the next study that we have for today is quite a fun one, where researchers in Budapest compared the behaviors of domesticated dogs and domesticated miniature pigs towards humans. They found that in neutral situations, the dogs and the pigs behaved very similarly. However, once it came to problem-solving situations, this is where the behavior changed. They started giving them increasingly harder and harder tasks to complete, and the pigs were found to be much faster at completing the tasks than dogs. And once it really reached parts where it would be impossible for them to really solve it themselves, they found that the pigs were much more persistent at trying to solve the problem themselves, whereas the dogs turned to their human companions much faster and much earlier. So the researchers wrote that pigs were faster than dogs already in solving the task and getting the reward, perhaps due to their better manipulative capacities. Then when the task became unsolvable, dogs turned to humans more than before. In contrast, pigs perform less human-oriented behaviors, but they're more persistent than dogs in trying to solve the task, which may reflect their predisposition to solve problems independently. The researchers wrote in conclusion that their study is the first to compare family dogs and pigs in problem-solving situations, adding that the similarities that they found between the two species point to their similar capacities for engaging in communicative interactions with humans. However, species-specific predisposition might be responsible for the found differences. Dogs are naturally more dependent on and cooperative with humans, adding that this perhaps explains their unique success in interacting with us. We have another animal study for this week, but this one is just for dogs. The researchers set out to find out when is the best time for you to neuter your dog without it leading to adverse health effects down the line. Their study is comprehensive as it contains recommendations for 35 different dog breeds. The researchers found that really depends from breed to breed as to when is the best time to neuter them. They found for larger dogs there's a tendency for them to develop joint problems as they get older if they're neutered too late. The study's authors explained that there is a huge disparity among different breeds, adding that there is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to health risks and the age at which a dog should be neutered. Some breeds develop problems while others didn't. Some may have developed joint disorders but not cancer, or the other way around. The findings of this next study might not come as a surprise to many of you, as researchers found that current diets around the world are neither healthy enough nor environmentally sustainable. The researchers found that following more closely current dietary guidelines would improve the health impact and would also have some benefits in terms of the environment. However, even they are not enough. They also found that the WHO recommendations fall short as well. The study was based on 85 countries and found that the adoption of national dietary guidelines is associated with reductions in premature mortality of 15% on average. It will also have mixed changes in terms of the environment and resource demands, including a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions of 13% on average. Despite the improvements associated with following more closely national dietary guidelines, the researchers found that most national guidelines are not compatible with at least one of the global and environmental targets. About a third of dietary guidelines were incompatible with the agenda of non-communicable diseases. Most were incompatible with the Paris Climate Agreement and other environmental targets. The researchers then compared the WHO recommendations and the National Dietary Guideline recommendations to those made by the Eat Lancet Commission. The Eat Lancet Commission is a food NGO that has also put out dietary guidelines. The researchers found that following the Eat Lancet recommendations was associated with 34% greater reductions in premature mortality, more than 3 times greater reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, and general attainment of the global environmental health targets. The researchers wrote in conclusion that their analysis suggests that national guidelines could be both healthier and more sustainable, providing clear advice on limiting the consumption of animal source foods, in particular beef and dairy, was found to have the greatest potential for increasing the environmental sustainability of dietary guidelines, whereas increasing the intake of whole grains, fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds and legumes, and reducing the intake of red and processed meat, and highlighting the importance of attaining balanced energy intake and weight levels were associated with most of the additional health benefits. We have a final feel-good study for this week where researchers surveyed 75,000 Americans, Germans, and Dutch people and found that most people become increasingly optimistic as they get older until they hit the age of about 65 to 70. They found that this is regardless of life's good or bad circumstances. The researchers wrote in conclusion that there's a massive stretch of life during which you keep consistently looking forward to things and the future. Part of that has to do with experiencing success both in work and life. You find a job, you meet your significant other, you achieve your goals, and so on. You become more autonomous and you're somewhat in control of your future. So you tend to expect things to turn out well. They further said that as people age into the elderly phase of life, the study showed a shift to declines in optimism, likely driven by health-related concerns and knowing that the bulk of life is behind you. While the elderly aren't full-fledged pessimists, there's still a noticeable change. Retirement age is when people can stop working, have time to travel, and to pursue their hobbies. But very surprisingly, people didn't really think that it would change the outlook of their lives for the better. The researchers added that the biggest conclusion of their study is the fact that how resilient people are in life. We oftentimes think that the really sad or tragic things that happen in life completely alter us as people, but that's not the case. You don't fundamentally change as a result of terrible things. People diagnosed with an illness or those who go through another crisis still felt positive about the future and what life had ahead for them on the other side. Well, that's it for this week. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like the content, make sure to give it a like and smash that subscribe button. Thank you and see you all next time.